Hello, welcome to Building Trust in Healthcare. I am MaryJo Burchard, the Principal Consultant for Concord Solutions in Virginia Beach. We're a consultancy that helps organizations, including healthcare, to build trust and change readiness and belonging while doing really hard things. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be talking today about the definition of trust, perhaps looking at trust in a way that you have not previously considered it, and then how to assess and build trust in real time. And then I'll leave you with a few little reflection questions as you move forward. So trust is the backbone and foundation of effective engagement for healthcare professionals, for officers, and for leaders. Why is that? Because people do not come to the doctor because things are good. They come to the doctor because something is wrong, which means that their trust is already in a vulnerable place. It's going to be a little harder for them to extend trust to strangers, even if they have the right role, the right authority, the right title, and the right certification. You could be meeting the people that you're trying to serve on the worst day of their life. And so you cannot afford to take trust for granted. Let's go ahead and define our terms. Trust, we are defining trust as choosing to put something valuable at risk by making it vulnerable to someone else's actions. And conversely, distrust is concluding that in this particular situation, at least, the thing that you value is not safe with the other person. It's not safe in the other person's care. There is a crisis of trust in healthcare right now in the United States. Between 1975 and 2019, confidence in the medical system among Americans was reported to drop from 80% confidence to 38% confidence by 2019. And then COVID happened. So that did not help trust matters much. Post-COVID-19, many people wonder who to trust regarding community health statistics, prevention strategies, what's safe, what's not safe for them and for their families, and even courses of treatment. So you're coming into healthcare at a very critical time. The return on investment, or ROI, of trust is also crucial. Patients who reported that they were able to trust their healthcare providers reported fewer and less extreme symptoms over time. They also reported higher patient satisfaction and better healthcare related quality of life overall. Think about that for a moment. Why would trust be so essential? First of all, if they don't trust you, they may not be willing to give you the necessary information that you need in order to properly treat them. Conversely, if you're not able to trust what they're giving you, you might misdiagnose or mistreat them. And so trust going both ways is extremely crucial in the patient healthcare provider relationship. Further, healthcare is not just the place that the patient attends, it is a workplace, right? And so Harvard Business Review examined the impact of high trust work environments on the productivity and effectiveness of people. And what they found was people that reported themselves to be in a high trust work environment, they reported 106% more energy at work, 74% less stress, 76% more engagement, and 40% less burnout. Why? Because if you are not worried about having to look over your shoulder, you're going to be free to do what you need to do. And if others are not suspicious of you, they're going to be more free to let you do what you do and to do what they need to do as well. So ultimately, trust needs to be seen as a dynamic, evolving experience in which both you and I are choosing to trust one another. So let's take a look a little more deeply at trust. And instead of looking at trust as just a flat entity, we're going to break it down into 6 distinct dimensions. Just like when someone comes in and they're not healthy, you want to be able to decipher which vital signs are compromised, right? You're going to take their blood pressure. You're going to take their temperature. You're going to measure their breathing. You're going to take their pulse. All of those things can give you hints as to what you need to treat and what you need to keep stable. The same is true in trust. So trust is like the vital signs of an effective interactive relationship. And so if I just look at trust as a flat entity, and I am trying to trust you, and you are being trustworthy in all areas, but you blow it in one, then I may say, I don't trust you at all, and you have to start completely from scratch. Well, that's exhausting not only to you, it's exhausting to me. It makes work a whole lot harder. So when we use a multidimensional approach to trust, then we can say things like, I can trust you in this, and that's totally intact. But over here, I'm going to need to see X, Y, or Z before I can make sure that this thing that I value is in capable hands in this area. And so let's take a look at these 6 dimensions of trust. The first dimension in the ASC-DOC trust model is authenticity. When someone trusts another person's authenticity, they're able to take the other person's words and actions at face value. But when it needs to be built, that means they're listening and they're watching and they're searching for hidden meaning. What's really going on here? What are they hiding from me? What did they really mean by that? So that is the dimension of authenticity. The second is safety. When someone trusts another person's safety, then they feel secure and protected and unthreatened in that person's presence. When trust in the area of safety needs to be built, they'll feel unsafe or vulnerable or threatened or constantly on the defensive when they're around that person. The third is consistency. Consistency is simply being able to predict what someone else is going to say or do in a specific situation based on what they've said and done in the past. So the more you're able to close your eyes and imagine what someone else's response would be, the more you can trust that person's consistency. When trust in this area needs to be built, you cannot predict what that person is going to say and do in a specific situation, and that is highly anxiety inducing. It's like walking on eggshells. The next 3 dimensions of trust, the first one is dependability. This is a specific kind of consistency, right? It is expecting that the other person is going to do what they say and keep their commitments and their confidences. When someone's dependability is in question, you're not convinced that they're going to keep those commitments. You're not convinced that they're going to keep confidentiality. You're not convinced that they are going to do what they said. Ownership takes this a step further. And when you trust someone else's ownership, or if they trust your ownership, then they can see that you personally own the outcome of that thing that they need to happen. So they know that if they put it in their hands, that they can let go and be at rest. If someone does not trust someone else's ownership, you can tell, because after they ask that person to do it and they say, I got this, they will go behind and ask a few other people to do the same thing just in case. It's kind of like in baseball, somebody saying, I got it, and they don't get it. If that happens enough, what do you see? You see other people on the team surrounding the person who's saying they got it, who can get it just in case. And the 6th dimension, the final dimension, is competence. And competence is simply this. You believe that the other person, the person whose confidence you trust, has the skill and the expertise to do what is expected in a specific situation. And if it is missing, if that confidence in someone's competence is missing, then you're not quite convinced that they have the skill or the expertise to do what is expected in that particular situation. It doesn't mean that they're incompetent in general, but in that particular thing. For example, if you have a wonderful therapist, that's great, and you go and you can unload on that person and know that that person's going to keep your confidence, they're going to guide you appropriately, but just because they're competent in therapy does not mean that you would allow them to conduct brain surgery on you, because they do not have the skill or expertise to do good in that category, even though you trust their competence in other areas. Now, why are these 6 dimensions important for you as an emerging healthcare provider? Well, once you get to competence, a lot of times in healthcare environments, it is assumed that competence is the only thing that is needed. Do you need competence? Absolutely. But it is not the only thing that you need in order to have the trust of the people around you. There are 5 other dimensions that you can gain or lose trust from people. And even if you are a great surgeon, if you do not look like you're going to own the outcome of the concern of the people, if you cannot be depended upon, if you are not consistent in the way that you engage and people don't know what you're going to say or do, if they don't sense that you are authentic or genuine, if they don't feel safe around you, then you can be a great surgeon and it will not be enough in many cases for the team, for the caregivers of the person. And at the same time, while you're growing in your competence, isn't it encouraging to know that even while people may not be convinced, justifiably in many cases, that you have the skill and expertise currently to do what is expected over here in the technical sense, you still have 5 other dimensions of trust that you can be building with the team members around you and with that patient and with their caregivers, so that they can feel like they need you and they want you to be participating in the solution. Now, remember how I said that trust goes both ways? This is really crucial. I'm going to ask you to do something, and for this exercise, for each of these dimensions, I want to encourage you to push pause and take your notes as you do this. But for each of these dimensions of trust, I want you to think of the last time that you consciously gave trust to someone in each of these dimensions. What did they say or do to gain this trust from you? And how far back did you have to go to find that memory that you consciously gave trust in that area? So that includes authenticity, that what you see and what you hear from that person is who they genuinely are and what they authentically mean. Safety, that they will be careful with you and that they will honor your vulnerability. When was the last time that you consciously gave someone your trust in their consistency, that they have clear patterns of predictable behavior, that what they've done is what they will do? How far back do you have to go to find those memories? Dependability. When was the last time you consciously gave someone trust that they were going to keep the commitments that they made to you? How about ownership? When was the last time you consciously made a commitment to trust someone's ownership, that they were taking personal responsibility for the success or failure of what was being entrusted to them, so that you could truly let it go and be at peace? And competence. When was the last time that you consciously trusted another person's competence, that they had the skill and expertise necessary to do what's expected? Push pause and really think about the last cognizant memory that you have of consciously dedicating trust to people in each of those dimensions of trust. What did they do to gain that from you? And how far back did you have to go to find that memory? Now, why does that matter? Because you are also part of the contribution of the trust dynamic that's happening both ways, right? And so you may be looking at the people around you and thinking that nobody is trustworthy in this dimension. Well, if you had to go all the way back to your childhood or 5 or 10 years ago for the last time that you consciously trusted someone in that area, maybe it's time that you allow for the possibility that your own capacity to trust, your own willingness to trust in that dimension might be contributing to your perception that nobody can be trusted in that. It might have to do as much with your own attitude and perceptions. Your truster might be broken. So think about that. It may not be that nobody is trustworthy in that area. Your discernment might be a little off. This is why trust cannot be taken for granted. You are choosing to trust them, and every single person that you engage with is choosing to trust you to some extent. And that trust experience is evolving for you and for them. That is why it is important to assess and build trust needs that consistently, constantly, and intentionally. I have a friend who is in occupational safety and health, and when he does safety trainings, he says safety, it's not safety first, it's safety always. Safety should be a lens that you lay over every engagement that you have to make sure that you're doing it safely. The same thing is true with trust. It's not a one and done, you walk into the room, you gain the trust, and you're finished. No, you need to be recognizing that throughout a particular experience, especially if it's a high stress, high stakes experience, that trust experience is evolving based on the interchange between you and the other people. So get curious about how and why they are choosing to trust you, and get curious about how and why you are choosing to trust them. And get intentional about increasing trust in both directions. So how can you do that? The first thing that you need to do is focus on the person. And for the next couple of slides, few slides, I'm going to focus on particularly the patient. But bear in mind, you need to be doing this with every person that you are interacting with on your team, up, down, and across. But let's focus on the person. Think about, as you're looking at that person and how they're engaging, how comfortable and how confident are they in your presence. Don't skip to a solution. Don't assume that it's all based on competence and skill and expertise in a specific thing. That's important. But don't skip to a solution without really pausing to see and hear that human being. Pay attention to how they are interacting with you. Do they seem guarded? Do they seem disconnected? Do they seem confident? Do they seem anxious? Gauge your current rapport with this person in this moment. Don't take trust for granted. And then ask for input. Really listen to that input. What are they sensing and feeling and perceiving in this moment? And how do those insights inform the way that they're behaving and the way that they are responding in this moment? People respond to things based on how it's impacting what's important to them. So as you're looking at your patient, if they're freaking out or if they're calm, what can you tell is important to them right now? And how is that important thing being impacted? It may not be about their health, their physical health. It might be something else in the room that is compromising their capacity to engage. What is happening right now from that person's perspective? Why might they be acting angry or scared or confused? Now, once you have taken the time to assess that, discover and validate what their current needs are. What is making them feel vulnerable right now? Remember, trust is the willingness to take what is valuable and place it in the care of someone else that you believe that they're going to be capable of holding that and caring for it. So the better you get at recognizing that you see those areas of vulnerability, the more likely they will be able to entrust that vulnerable thing to you, whether that's emotionally or physically or information. So you can say things like, it sounds like you need XYZ. How can I help? Or you seem anxious or frustrated or disconnected or preoccupied. How can I help? Essential needs that you identify include physical issues, but they also can transcend the physical and environmental dimensions. For example, a patient might be anxious because their caregiver couldn't come with them. Maybe their caregiver or their spouse is deployed, something like that. And so you need to make sure that you are clarifying if there seems to be an elephant in the room that you haven't given a name to. Affirm the trust that already is present. Reinforce the trust baseline that you already see that you have. Can they trust your authenticity? Do they seem like they are not suspicious that you're hiding something from them? Say it. Are they feeling safe with you? Go ahead and say the things that you can tell that they're trusting. Like, for example, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. This is what's going on. Or, don't worry, I'm going to make sure that every precaution is taken for your child. Those different types of things. How can you protect and reinforce and continue to earn the trust that's already present? Then you're going to probably see that there is an area or two Not all six, you're not going to be thinking about all 6 items all the time, but there's probably going to be a prominent area where there is a gap in trust, where it's a little harder for that patient to trust you. Right now, it may be the competence area, right? If you're still growing in skills and experience, but how can you address today's current needs and concerns with what you have access to? Get good at listening for clues about the current needs. Confirm that you understand what you do hear and observe, and get creative in addressing those needs. Even if you're not the one to meet them, try to make those connections. The better you get at seeing and hearing and validating the needs of the people in front of you and meeting those needs, the more that needle of trust will move in the right direction. The better you get at adapting to those needs and helping people to feel like human beings in the process, the more likely they are to entrust what's important to them into your care. So, how does this approach inform your value for trust as a multidimensional, ever-evolving lens that you lay over everything in your engagement as a healthcare provider? How does that inform your value for trust as a healthcare professional? How does it inform your value for trust as an officer, as a team member, as a leader, and perhaps most importantly, as a human being? Thank you so much. I trust that this will help you in your journey forward.